Your soulmate never left you, they just erased you quietly. Stay with me for a moment, and stay till the end, because this isn't a story about someone walking out with slammed doors or dramatic goodbyes. It's about something far subtler, something that often hurts more because it's harder to name. Your soulmate didn't disappear all at once. They didn't vanish in a single argument or a clear ending. They faded you out slowly, carefully, until one day you realized you were no longer part of their life in any real way. Listen carefully. When people talk about being left, they imagine abandonment that's loud and obvious. But what happens most often is quieter. Messages get shorter. Conversations lose depth. Plans become vague. You're still technically there, but you're no longer seen. No one tells you it's over. You just stop being chosen. Stay right here. That's what makes it so confusing. You replay moments in your head, wondering when the shift happened. You question whether you imagined the closeness, whether you asked for too much, whether you missed a sign you were supposed to catch earlier. Because there was no clear ending, your mind keeps searching for one. Don't scroll now. Being erased quietly doesn't feel like rejection at first. It feels like distance that might be temporary. Like a phase. Like something you just need to be patient about. So you wait. You give space. You explain things away. And while you're trying to be understanding, they're slowly removing you from their emotional world. Stay with me. The hardest part isn't that they left. It's that they stayed just long enough to make you doubt yourself. Long enough to keep hope alive. Long enough to make you feel foolish for noticing the change. Quiet erasure teaches you to silence your instincts instead of trusting them. Listen carefully. Your soulmate didn't stop caring in one moment. They stopped showing up in many small ones. They stopped asking how you were really doing. They stopped sharing what was happening in their life. They stopped making space for you, but never told you why. And that absence of explanation is what keeps you stuck. Stay right here. You start shrinking yourself to fit the distance. You become more careful with your words. You lower your expectations. You tell yourself not to push, not to pressure, not to make things uncomfortable. And in doing that, you slowly erase yourself too. Don't skip this. Quiet erasure doesn't come with closure. It leaves you with questions instead of answers. It leaves you replaying conversations, analyzing tone, wondering if you misread everything. And because nothing was said out loud, you feel like you don't have the right to be hurt. Stay with me. You tell yourself it wasn't that serious. That maybe you expected too much. That maybe this is just how things end sometimes. But deep down, you know something important was taken without being acknowledged. You lost someone who was once central to your life, and there was no moment where that loss was honored. Listen carefully. Being erased quietly makes you question your worth in ways loud endings don't. When someone walks away clearly, you can grieve and move forward. When someone fades you out, you're left wondering what made you so easy to leave behind without explanation. Stay right here. You didn't imagine the connection. You didn't make it up. It was real. The fact that it ended quietly doesn't mean it didn't matter. It means the other person didn't know how to end it honestly. Don't scroll now. Sometimes people erase instead of leaving because erasing feels easier. It avoids confrontation. It avoids accountability. It allows them to move on without facing the impact of their choices. But that ease for them creates confusion for you. Stay with me. You start to miss not just the person, but the version of yourself you were with them. The way you laughed. The way you felt understood. The way you showed up without guarding every word. Quiet erasure takes that version of you away without warning. Listen carefully. You might wonder if reaching out one more time would change anything. If saying the right words would bring them back. But someone who erases you quietly has already made a decision. They just didn't give you the respect of telling you. Stay right here. And here's the part that matters most. Being erased quietly doesn't mean you were forgettable. It means you were avoided. It means your presence carried weight they didn't want to deal with. It means honesty felt harder than distance. Don't skip this. You didn't lose your soulmate because you weren't enough. You lost them because they chose silence over truth. And that choice says more about them than it ever will about you. Stay with me. The pain you feel isn't weakness. It's the natural response to unfinished endings. To bonds that were loosened instead of untied. To relationships that ended without being named. Listen carefully. Healing from quiet erasure starts when you stop waiting for clarity from the person who withheld it. When you stop hoping they'll explain. When you accept that the absence of answers is, itself, an answer. Stay right here. You don't need their acknowledgement to validate what you felt. You don't need their apology to move forward. You are allowed to grieve something that ended without permission. Don't scroll now. One day, you'll realize that being erased quietly forced you to listen to yourself more closely. It taught you what it feels like to be overlooked, so you'll never do that to someone else. It sharpened your awareness of what presence really means. Stay with me. Your soulmate never left you in the way people talk about leaving. They erased you quietly. And while that hurts deeply, it also reveals something important. You deserve a love that stays present, communicates clearly, and chooses you out loud. Listen carefully. The right connection won't fade you out. It won't make you guess. It won't make you feel like you're asking for too much by wanting honesty. The right love won't erase you. It will see you. Stay right here. If this story felt uncomfortably familiar, if it put words to something you've been carrying quietly, stay till the end and take a moment to like this, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe if you want more conversations like this. Stay with me. Stay with me a little longer. After someone erases you quietly, the aftermath doesn't arrive as a single wave of grief. It comes in fragments. In moments where you reach for your phone without thinking. In places you still associate with their presence. In the instinct to share something before remembering you're no longer included in their life the way you once were. Quiet erasure leaves echoes, and those echoes take time to fade. Listen carefully. One of the hardest parts is how invisible the loss feels to the outside world. There was no announcement. No clear ending. No moment you can point to and say, this is when it ended. So when you struggle, it can feel isolating. You wonder if you're overreacting, if you're holding on to something that technically doesn't exist anymore. But your body remembers. Your heart remembers. And that memory doesn't disappear just because no one else saw the ending. Stay right here. You might replay conversations looking for the exact moment things shifted. The sentence you should have noticed. The tone you misread. The silence you ignored. This kind of searching is natural. The mind wants closure. It wants a clean narrative. But quiet erasure doesn't give you that. It leaves you with ambiguity, and ambiguity is one of the hardest things to heal from. Don't scroll now. You might also notice how this kind of ending changes the way you trust. Not just others, but yourself. You question your perception. You wonder how you didn't see it coming. How you could feel so close to someone who was already halfway gone. That self-doubt can linger if you don't name it for what it is. It's not a flaw in you. It's the result of being kept in the dark. Stay with me. Being erased quietly often makes you feel replaceable, like your presence was optional all along. That feeling cuts deep because it attacks your sense of significance. But here's the truth you need to hear. People don't erase what doesn't matter. They erase what they don't know how to handle. Avoidance is not indifference. It's fear dressed up as distance. Listen carefully. When someone chooses to fade instead of speak, they're choosing the path of least resistance for themselves. They're avoiding discomfort, confrontation, and responsibility. That choice protects them in the short term, but it leaves you carrying unanswered questions. And carrying those questions can make you feel like the pain belongs to you. It doesn't. Stay right here. You might feel tempted to reach out one last time. To ask for clarity. To say something that finally makes them explain. That urge comes from wanting to restore balance, to make the ending feel fair. But fairness isn't something you can force from someone who chose silence. Sometimes the most powerful closure is the one you give yourself. Don't skip this. Quiet erasure can make you feel like you need to earn your way back into someone's awareness. Like if you just say the right thing, you'll be seen again. But being seen should never be something you have to chase. Love that requires you to disappear to be tolerated is not love that sustains you. Stay with me. You might also notice anger showing up later, after the sadness softens. Anger at the lack of honesty. At the way things ended without respect. At the way you were left to piece together the truth alone. That anger is valid. It's part of recognizing that you deserved better communication than you received. Listen carefully. Healing doesn't mean pretending the erasure didn't hurt. It means acknowledging that it did, without letting it define your worth. It means allowing yourself to grieve not just the person, but the future you imagined with them. That future mattered, even if it never happened. Stay right here. Over time, you may start to notice how this experience reshapes your boundaries. You become more attentive to consistency. More aware of effort. Less willing to accept ambiguity where clarity is owed. Quiet erasure teaches you, painfully, what presence really looks like. Don't scroll now. You might also realize how strong you've become without meaning to. How you learn to sit with unanswered questions. How you learn to let go without explanation. That strength wasn't chosen, but it's real. And it's something no one can take from you. Stay with me. There will come a moment when you stop checking if they've noticed your absence. When their silence no longer feels personal. When you understand that the ending wasn't about your value, but about their capacity. That moment doesn't arrive suddenly. It grows quietly, just like the erasure did. Listen carefully. You didn't fail because you stayed longer than they did. You didn't lose because you cared deeply. Caring is not a weakness. It's a measure of your ability to connect. The fact that someone couldn't meet you there doesn't diminish that ability. It clarifies it. Stay right here. Quiet erasure often leaves you with a heightened sensitivity to being overlooked. You may flinch at delayed responses. You may read into silence more than before. Be patient with yourself through that. Your nervous system learned something the hard way. It will take time to feel safe again. Don't skip this. One day, you'll recognize the difference between someone needing space and someone creating distance. Between someone processing and someone disappearing. And when you see that difference, you'll no longer wait in confusion. You'll choose yourself sooner. Stay with me. You won't always need answers to move forward. Sometimes moving forward is the answer. Choosing to invest your energy where it's returned. Choosing relationships where your presence is valued, not tolerated. Listen carefully. Being erased quietly doesn't mean you were invisible. It means someone chose not to see you anymore. And that choice does not define your visibility in the world. It defines their limitations. Stay right here. As you heal, you may feel a quiet resolve forming. A promise to yourself that you won't stay where you're not met. That you won't explain your worth to someone who's already decided to look away. That promise is not bitterness. It's self-respect. Don't scroll now. The story doesn't end with erasure. It continues with discernment. With clarity. With a deeper understanding of what you need to feel secure and valued. And that understanding will guide you toward connections that don't fade without explanation. Stay with me. You're not broken because someone erased you quietly. You're learning. You're integrating. You're becoming someone who recognizes presence when it's real and absence when it's intentional. Listen carefully. The right people won't erase you. They won't leave you guessing. They won't make you doubt your place in their life. They'll choose you clearly, consistently, and out loud. Stay right here. What you lost wasn't your soulmate. It was an illusion of mutuality. And losing that illusion, as painful as it is, creates space for something honest to take its place. Stay with me again. As time moves on after being erased quietly, something subtle begins to happen inside you. The sharp confusion softens, but in its place comes a deeper awareness. You start noticing patterns you couldn't see before because you were too close to the situation. Distance, even when it's forced on you, has a way of clarifying things you once tried to explain away. Listen carefully. You begin to remember moments that didn't sit right at the time. The hesitation before replies. The way plans were always tentative. The way you were present for them, but they were increasingly absent for you. Back then, you gave those moments the benefit of the doubt. You assumed stress, distraction, timing. Now you see them differently. Not as isolated incidents, but as a slow withdrawal you weren't meant to notice until it was complete. Stay right here. What hurts isn't just that they erased you, but that you were still investing while they were already letting go. You were carrying emotional weight for two people without realizing it. And when that weight suddenly dropped, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath you. That kind of imbalance doesn't end cleanly. It leaves you disoriented. Don't scroll now. You may notice how quiet erasure makes you replay your own behavior with a harsh lens. You ask yourself if you were too available, too understanding, too patient. You wonder if you made it easy for them to fade because you didn't demand clarity sooner. But asking for presence is not pressure. Wanting honesty is not a flaw. Those thoughts are your pain trying to find logic. Stay with me. Slowly, you start to understand that erasure isn't caused by you not being enough. It's caused by someone not being willing to be fully present. Presence requires effort, communication, and courage. And not everyone has that capacity, even if they once showed glimpses of it. Listen carefully. One of the hardest truths is accepting that someone can care about you and still choose distance. Care without responsibility is confusing. It feels warm one moment and cold the next. And when that inconsistency disappears entirely, you're left questioning which version of them was real. The answer is often both. People are complex, but complexity doesn't excuse avoidance. Stay right here. You may also notice how quiet erasure affects your sense of safety in future connections. You become more alert to shifts in energy. More sensitive to silence. More aware of when effort starts to feel one-sided. That vigilance isn't weakness. It's your mind trying to protect you from reliving the same experience. Don't skip this. At the same time, you might grieve the loss of trust more than the loss of the person. Trust in shared moments. Trust in words that once felt sincere. Trust in your own ability to judge closeness. That grief deserves space. It's part of rebuilding your inner foundation. Stay with me. As you process, you may feel moments of clarity mixed with moments of longing. Healing isn't linear. One day you feel strong and resolved. The next, you miss them unexpectedly. That doesn't mean you're moving backward. It means your attachment is unraveling at its own pace. Listen carefully. Quiet erasure often teaches you how much you value being chosen intentionally. Not occasionally. Not conveniently. Intentionally. You realize that real connection isn't about availability when it suits someone. It's about consistency even when it doesn't. Stay right here. You also start recognizing how often you were adjusting yourself to keep the connection alive. How you softened your needs. How you delayed your feelings. How you made yourself smaller to avoid pushing them away. That self-awareness can sting, but it's also empowering. It shows you what you're no longer willing to do. Don't scroll now. There may be moments when you feel tempted to romanticize the past, to remember only the closeness and forget the distance. That's natural. The mind seeks comfort. But try to remember the whole picture. Not just how it felt when they were present, but how it felt when they weren't. Stay with me. Over time, you begin to feel a quiet shift from questioning to acceptance. Not acceptance of how they treated you, but acceptance that you may never get the explanation you wanted. And strangely, that acceptance brings relief. It frees you from waiting. From hoping they'll suddenly acknowledge what they did. Listen carefully. You realize that closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you build when you stop outsourcing your peace. When you decide that understanding your worth matters more than understanding their behavior. Stay right here. You may also notice a new clarity in your boundaries. You become less tolerant of vague communication. Less willing to chase reassurance. Less patient with inconsistency. Quiet erasure leaves scars, but it also leaves wisdom. Don't skip this. You start to see that being erased quietly was a reflection of their inability to stay present, not your inability to be loved. That distinction matters. It changes the narrative from self-blame to self-respect. Stay with me. As you heal, your energy begins to return to you. You stop checking if they've noticed your absence. You stop wondering if they'll reach out. Their silence loses its power. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it no longer defines you. Listen carefully. You begin to imagine future connections differently. You imagine being with someone who doesn't fade when things get real. Someone who communicates even when it's uncomfortable. Someone who doesn't make you guess where you stand. That vision becomes clearer because you know exactly what you don't want anymore. Stay right here. You also learn to trust your instincts again. You realize that the discomfort you felt early on was real. You weren't overthinking. You were noticing. And next time, you'll listen sooner. Don't scroll now. There is strength in surviving quiet erasure. It forces you to confront uncertainty, ambiguity, and loss without clear answers. It teaches resilience in a way loud endings never do. And that resilience becomes part of who you are. Stay with me. You won't always remember this experience with pain. One day, you'll remember it as a turning point. The moment you stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing yourself. Listen carefully. Being erased quietly doesn't mean you were invisible. It means you were present in a situation that couldn't meet your depth. And depth always deserves reciprocity. Stay right here. The person who erased you quietly may never understand the impact of their silence. But you will understand its lesson. And that lesson will guide you toward connections that don't require you to disappear to belong. Don't skip this. You're not meant to be a footnote in someone's life. You're meant to be seen, heard, and chosen clearly. And now, you're closer to that than you were before. Stay with me. Stay with me a little longer. By the time you reach this point, something inside you has already shifted, even if you can't fully name it yet. The pain of being erased quietly doesn't disappear, but it changes texture. It's no longer sharp confusion. It becomes a steady awareness. An understanding that what happened altered you, but didn't define you. Listen carefully. You start to notice how your energy feels different now. You're more protective of it, not out of fear, but out of respect. You don't offer access as easily. You don't explain yourself as much. You don't overextend to keep someone comfortable. That change isn't coldness. It's discernment, learned the hard way. Stay right here. You realize how much emotional labor you were doing before. How often you were filling in gaps that weren't yours to fill. How often you were interpreting silence, smoothing over distance, carrying conversations that required two people. Quiet erasure teaches you how draining that kind of one-sided effort really is. Don't scroll now. You may also notice moments where grief resurfaces unexpectedly. Not because you want them back, but because something reminds you of who you were when you believed you were mutually chosen. That version of you mattered. It deserved better care than it received. Let yourself honor that without judgment. Stay with me. Over time, you begin to forgive yourself for staying as long as you did. You stop asking why you tolerated uncertainty. You understand that you stayed because you cared, because you believed in connection, because you trusted what you felt. Those aren't flaws. They're human qualities that only become painful in the wrong hands. Listen carefully. You also stop personalizing their disappearance. You recognize that some people don't leave loudly because they've never learned how to face discomfort directly. Silence becomes their coping mechanism. Distance becomes their solution. That doesn't excuse the harm, but it explains the pattern. Stay right here. You begin to see how quiet erasure reveals emotional immaturity more than emotional incompatibility. Someone who fades instead of communicates isn't necessarily rejecting you. They're avoiding accountability. And accountability is required for anything real to last. Don't skip this. You might notice a new standard forming inside you. A quiet one. You don't announce it. You don't justify it. You simply know that clarity matters now. That effort matters. That presence matters. You no longer mistake potential for commitment. Stay with me. You become more attuned to how people show up when things are inconvenient. When life is busy. When emotions are uncomfortable. Quiet erasure taught you that words mean very little without consistency behind them. And that lesson stays with you. Listen carefully. You may also feel a sense of relief mixed with the sadness. Relief that you no longer have to guess. Relief that you're not waiting anymore. Relief that your energy is no longer tied to someone who couldn't meet you fully. That relief doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It means you're healing. Stay right here. You start reclaiming parts of yourself that went quiet during the erasure. Your voice. Your confidence. Your sense of humor. Your emotional openness. They return slowly, cautiously, but they return. And when they do, you realize how much you had muted yourself without realizing it. Don't scroll now. You also become more honest about what you want moving forward. Not in an idealistic way, but in a grounded one. You want communication that doesn't leave you guessing. You want consistency that doesn't disappear. You want to feel chosen without having to chase. Stay with me. You stop romanticizing mystery. You stop finding meaning in silence. You understand now that real depth doesn't require confusion. Real intimacy doesn't require endurance. Real connection doesn't ask you to doubt your place. Listen carefully. Quiet erasure leaves behind a deeper respect for mutual effort. You recognize the difference between someone needing space and someone slowly exiting your life. And next time, you won't wait in limbo. You'll address it, or you'll step back sooner. Stay right here. You also learn how to sit with unanswered questions without letting them consume you. You accept that some people will never explain themselves. And you realize that explanation isn't the same as accountability anyway. Don't skip this. One of the most powerful shifts happens when you stop hoping they'll come back just to validate what you felt. You validated yourself. You trust your experience. You stop outsourcing your sense of reality to someone who chose silence. Stay with me. You become someone who notices effort early. Someone who listens to patterns instead of promises. Someone who understands that love doesn't fade quietly when it's real. It communicates, even when it's hard. Listen carefully. Being erased quietly didn't make you smaller. It made you clearer. It showed you exactly what absence feels like, so you'll recognize presence instantly next time. It taught you that you deserve to be chosen out loud. Stay right here. You might even feel gratitude one day, not for the pain, but for the clarity it forced. For the way it ended something that wasn't capable of meeting your depth. For the way it redirected you toward yourself. Don't scroll now. You are no longer waiting for someone to notice you're gone. You're building a life where being noticed isn't conditional. Where connection feels safe, mutual, and honest. Stay with me. Quiet erasure doesn't get the final word. Growth does. Self-respect does. Discernment does. And those things are shaping the connections you'll allow from this point forward. Listen carefully. You weren't erased because you lacked value. You were erased because someone lacked the courage to stay present. And that difference changes everything. Stay right here. The next time someone enters your life, you'll know what to look for. Not intensity. Not promises. Presence. Consistency. Effort that doesn't fade. Don't skip this. You're not invisible. You never were. You were simply in a space that couldn't hold you. And now, you're moving toward spaces that can. Stay with me. Stay with me until the very end. This is where everything you've been carrying begins to settle into something quieter, something steadier. By now, you're no longer asking why they erased you quietly. You're no longer trying to reconstruct every moment to find the exact point where things slipped away. That need has softened, and in its place is something more solid. Understanding. Listen carefully. You begin to see that what happened wasn't a failure of love on your part. It was a failure of presence on theirs. And once that truth lands, the weight you've been carrying starts to lift. Not all at once, but enough for you to breathe differently. Enough for you to stop holding yourself responsible for someone else's silence. Stay right here. You realize that the pain came not just from losing them, but from losing yourself in the process of trying to stay connected. From waiting. From adjusting. From hoping that if you were patient enough, present enough, understanding enough, things would return to what they once were. Letting go of that hope is painful, but it's also freeing. Don't scroll now. You're no longer measuring your worth by whether they remember you. You're no longer wondering if you mattered. You know you did. And you also know that someone can matter to you and still be incapable of showing up the way you deserve. Both things can be true without canceling each other out. Stay with me. There's a quiet strength that comes from surviving something without closure. From walking away without answers. From choosing yourself when someone else wouldn't choose you clearly. That strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. But it changes how you move through the world. Listen carefully. You start noticing how much lighter your mind feels when you stop revisiting old conversations. How much calmer your body feels when you're no longer waiting for a message that may never come. The absence that once felt unbearable now feels like space. And space is where new things grow. Stay right here. You no longer romanticize the connection the way you once did. You remember the warmth, yes, but you also remember the confusion. You remember how often you questioned your place. How often you felt the need to minimize yourself to keep the peace. And you understand now that love shouldn't require you to disappear. Don't skip this. You begin to trust yourself again. Your instincts. Your perceptions. The discomfort you felt wasn't imaginary. It was information. And next time, you'll listen sooner. Not because you're guarded, but because you're wise. Stay with me. You stop seeing the erasure as something that happened to you and start seeing it as something that revealed what wasn't sustainable. What couldn't grow. What couldn't meet you where you stood. That shift changes the story from loss to redirection. Listen carefully. You also begin to open your heart again, slowly, carefully, without rushing. Not to the past, but to the possibility of something different. Something that doesn't fade when things get real. Something that communicates instead of withdrawing. Something that chooses you without hesitation. Stay right here. You understand now that real connection doesn't make you feel confused about your place. It doesn't keep you guessing. It doesn't require endurance. It brings clarity. It brings calm. It brings a sense of being seen without having to prove yourself. Don't scroll now. You may still think of them sometimes. Not with longing, but with distance. With a recognition that they were part of your story, but not the ending. And that's okay. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. Some are meant to teach you how to leave. Stay with me. You begin to feel proud of yourself. Not for how long you stayed, but for how you healed. For how you chose growth over bitterness. For how you turned pain into awareness instead of walls. That choice matters. Listen carefully. You are no longer available to be erased quietly. Not because you demand perfection, but because you require presence. You require honesty. You require effort that doesn't disappear when it's inconvenient. Stay right here. You now know the difference between someone being busy and someone making you optional. Between space that's communicated and distance that's imposed. Between love that struggles and love that avoids. That knowledge protects you. Don't skip this. One day, someone will enter your life and stay. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But consistently. They won't fade when things get uncomfortable. They won't leave you questioning your value. They won't erase you quietly. They'll see you clearly. Stay with me. And when that happens, you'll understand why this ending had to be quiet. Why it had to fall apart the way it did. Why you had to learn what absence feels like so you could recognize presence instantly. Listen carefully. You didn't lose your soulmate. You lost someone who couldn't meet your depth with honesty. And losing that creates space for something real. Stay right here. You are not invisible. You never were. You were simply in a place that couldn't hold you. And now, you're moving toward places, and people, that can. Stay with me.